So back sometime last winter, we had a nun come from the Sisters of St. Joseph who gave a talk about the people in Ukraine. And, we could just see that the need was so great. And it hadn't even really started at that point. And I was riding home in the car with a woman who is in her 90s at this point. And we were just saying, well, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And then, as Craig said, we can knit. We thought that originally the Sisters of St. Joseph's were going to be able to take these things over to Poland and then get them across to Ukraine. And we found out that for whatever reason they weren't going to be able to do that. And we'd already started knitting. We already had a lot of things created when we found out that right there in Cape May, where Craig and I live, there's a group called Cape May Shelters Lutsk. And Lutsk is a little town in Ukraine, and one of the people who lives in Cape May, her brother runs 3 bomb shelters there. And basically it's the women and the children, because the husbands are off fighting. And they send over an enormous amount of equipment, lights, candles, heaters. I can't even begin to tell you. Once a month they send this tremendous amount over there. And I was able to just call them up and say, we knit, can we send our things? And they love it. And they're the ones who send us the videos back of the kids opening the things up. We have one video of all the kids saying, thank you, Cape May. And it's just, it's a wonderful feeling, because we know when we send it over there, it's going to the people who need it. And I think that so many people have been donating money that's never reached there. But we know every time we'll get something back from them. Some little girl wearing a hat or something. It's just adorable.
One of the pictures that still makes me choke up, I collected, there's a woman in Wildwood Crest, and she has given us several bags full of stuff. Usually they're Afghans, and she's a crocheter, but so there was a picture on the Knitting for Peace website, which Liz does, that showed a little boy, maybe about 8 or 9, sitting on a bed, wrapped in one of her blue and yellow Afghans. And it just still makes me cry when I think about it. And, awesome. When I think of, are we making a difference? Yes, we are. And we made a difference to that little boy.
Yes.
So what's this then?
This is a quilt.
It's going to be a baby quilt.
3 layers.
3 layers, just the fabric on top of each other, just not trying to get too fancy, just getting it made with the batting in to keep it warm, make it warm. And I have what's called a mid-arm sit-down quilting machine, and I like to do that part of quilting. So once it's layered together, I will take it home and stitch the layers together and put binding on it and stitch the binding.
Some of BJ's beautiful quilts are in the meeting house, so if you worship with us some Sunday, you can wrap yourself up in a beautiful quilt.
You spun that wine? That wine?
I spun all of it. Everything that's in here is hand spun.
Wow.
Some of it's hand dyed also, not all of it, but some of
the
it.
colors.
That is gorgeous.
And
the way I
spinning
feel
is
about it.
very
It's fun.
zen. It's very meditative. The
Well,
most.
that's where you get your wool and what you do with it.
Yeah. Oh, I get it lots of different places, mostly online, although when I go to visit my friend in Maine, we sometimes go up to Bartlett Mills, which, if anybody's a Stephen King fan, one of his movies, they used this mill as a in the thing. Different wools have different characteristics as to what they're good for.
So I guess Ukraine would be cold and wet, right? So
Yeah.
So what wool's good for that then?
Well, almost any wool is good for that, because wool will keep you warm even when the wool's wet, which is unusual amongst fibers.
And it dries fairly quickly too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So when we started this project, we were trying to decide, do we need all real wool? Can we use synthetic? Can we do all these things? And finally, with all the donated yarn that we're getting and just people showing up with things. I mean, this is chenille that I just brought from Michael's this morning, you know, but I mean, look at this. It's going to make the most warm, cozy,
Yeah.
you know, Afghan.
A friend of mine, when I was originally talking about this, she said, well, how do you know what they need? And I said, they need everything.
Yeah.
Whatever we send, they will need.
This
These
is a
are-
Sesame Street collection.
These are
And I actually
adorable.
made these because I found them, the kits at Michael's. So here is Elmo, Cookie Monster,
Oh my gosh.
Oscar the Grouch, and Big Bird.
Oh, they're so cute.
And right now I'm working on Zoe. She's the next one. And look how cute this yarn is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that pretty? The
Yes.
pink and the purple and the white. Yeah.
And
so.
these kids just, you know, they'll see that and they'll just like they'll be. Those are baby hats, really, but they're adorable.
And then I
You know, Carlton, that's another thing too, is that so many of us who do this have yarn.
And
So
I'm
many
sorry, I
people
forget. This
have
is
donated yarn that maybe belonged to their
This is
grandmother
yarn.
or their aunt, and
that-
we've
that,
gotten
yes.
several things that other people have started and weren't able to finish.
We all have, you know, secret stashes of yarn that I have hidden from my husband, and I'm sure. So in other places. So this is a good way to end up thinking, get rid of my yarn. You know, I can do something useful with it.
There's a long, long history of women getting together to do things like this, to help somebody in the community quilt their quilt when they were doing hand quilting. And it's good. And there's a history of it in this meeting years and years ago, and I'm probably the only one here that knows about it,
Yeah,
but
probably.
there was a group called the Quaker Ladies, and they used to knit and crochet, and they would give the stuff to the American Friends Service Committee.
I wasn't raised Quaker, but I was raised by a Quaker. My parents are Quaker and Catholic, so my mom and even my dad, we always did charitable things. I was in 4-H, and we did a lot of just giving back to the community. So for me, when I was in Missouri, I had little tiny kids, and it was the easiest way to give back and still be able to take care of my children.
Right.
Because when you have 3 kids under the age of 6, it's hard to, volunteer anywhere, because what are you going to do with the kids while you're volunteering? So now, some of you know that I found out I had cancer back a year ago, so I've been dealing with that this past year. And this is something that I can still do, and while I'm recovering from cancer, and while I'm building a business and still taking care of my children, and it's not something where I have to commit a lot of time to. I can pick up my knitting and make something and know that it's going to go to help somebody out there in the world that needs it. So
Is this like open to the public? Are there other people? You know what I mean?
It is open to the public, and there was a lovely article in the Atlantic City Press on Sunday by meeting member Bill Barlow that you may have seen, inviting people and stating where we work, and we're hoping to get publicity out and have a real swarm by the time spring arrives.
They can call me, they can call Craig, they can get on the Facebook page and message us, or just tell us what they have, and we'll find a way. We'll find a way to get it.
Have you gotten a lot of like individual donations, or is it mainly just the meetings?
Many. I'd say right now we've probably sent over 2,000 pieces. And
Yeah,
Yeah, Liz would know because
probably
they're-
more of
they've
them.
all been in her house.
Yes, probably more of them from
Exactly.
non-meeting
Yeah.
people than from meeting people.
For example, Carlton, all of this yarn here was given to me yesterday by a friend who's not a member of Seaville, and she just cleaned out some extra yarn she had that she needed to get rid of, and said, "Here, take it."
Wow. How does this stuff actually get over there? Is it by plane, by boat, by plane?
by plane, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an organization here in the United States that sends things over to Poland, and so these are delivered right to the Polish border, and then it goes with humanitarian aid to the shelters.
Wait a sec.
So I mean, it never, our fingers never leave our hands. We always know where it is at all times.
I think in location, then if we were just sending it somewhere via a mass post office box or something, we know that this is being used in areas that it really needs to be. And that's what makes it even more fulfilling, I think, for all of us. So starting today, I plan to be here every Wednesday at 1. And if I can't be here, then maybe somebody else can be here. But so this way there's a dedicated space for anybody who wants to come, bring yarn, knit, sit, chat, whatever, for however long you can, an hour or two. And this way it's a regularly scheduled event.
Now, are the shipments going to the Poland-Ukraine border? Are they making it across the border to Ukraine? Where are the refugees from?
Okay, the refugees, actually, the fellow that's the brother of the woman who lives in Cape May, he and she and her husband used to work for the UN back when I think it was Croatia was being bombed by Russia. And so, they basically have all the connections, they know how to do it. And so what they do is they send it through this Polish company to the border, and then the Ukrainians send it out with their humanitarian things. So the food and everything all goes together with our knitting. And then Zoran, his name is, the brother, he has now, I guess because he and his wife is a psychiatrist, and she's working with these children. And the pictures are just, they're heartrending and beautiful and everything. But he now is in charge of 3 shelters. So, in 3 different towns. But Lutska is the one, the central one. And the last time I was talking to Vesna, the woman from Cape May, she said that the temperature is right around freezing in that shelter.
In the shelter.
In the shelter.
In the shelter, inside the shelter. So...
Do they have heat, or I guess no?
Well, I think maybe what happens is every time the electricity goes out or something happens to the grid, they all dive for our knitted goods.
There was a week or so ago, one of the NBC correspondent, Richard Engel, who's like always in a war zone somewhere, and he was invited into an older woman who invited to come in down in the basement where they were living in this area where I guess it was the basement of their former home that had been bombed out. And she was there, and they were eating by candlelight, and she insisted that he have some borscht. But there was a woman sitting there knitting by candlelight. And I just thought, that's what I thought about. And then we came up with this idea of the kits. Because where are these people unless you have a big stash of yarn? But, they don't have shops to go to anymore in a lot of places. So that's why the idea of the kits became so, I think Regis really thought that was a great thing to try to send.
So a project that Craig and I are working on now that we really have a large group of people that are working on the knitting. And Craig and I, with the yarn that has been donated, have started to make little knitting kits that we're sending over. And so we have in each kit, we have some yarn about the right amount, and we have needles or crochet hooks, whichever we need. Craig's gone through and, divided up the yarn so that all the pretty colors are matching. And we're going to send it over there with instructions for making something. So, each child or each adult will get a little knitting kit and be able to learn how to knit themselves. Yeah. So in each one of these little knitting kits, we're going to have a little 3x5 card. And on one side it says, sometimes when the world seems crazy and you find that there's nothing else you can do, you can knit. It calms your mind. It invites you into a world of color and creativity. and it makes something real that you design for you, for a friend, or for a stranger. You can do it alone, while talking to a friend, or at a football game. Knitting is a friend for life. Sometimes your heart works best through your hands. Knitting for Peace, Seaville Friends meeting. And on the back, we have it in Ukrainian.
Oh, bless you. I was wondering about that.